Welcome to Overdrive. I'm Peter Hills and these are my mini racing diaries. Pretty miserable, wet and horrible day, and we're heading off to Specialist Components. We're going to pick up my short engine, which effectively consists of the block, the crank, the rods, because we had a bit of a disaster last year at Brands Hatch supporting German touring cars, and I lost the oil pressure and then the engine nipped up, and when we took it apart we found all the bearings, the centre main bearing had gone, and it damaged the crank and damaged the block. So they've been doing a load of work on it for me, trying to recover it, which has now been done. And just as we're heading off to coming up to Christmas, we're going to drive up and pick everything up, and then hopefully start the build in the new year. One of the plans for 2020 with Overdrive is to kind of do some filming on what it takes to go racing as a clubman in the UK, especially when you're engineering the car yourself. So we'll kind of do some films on race car prep and what goes on over the weekends, and what happens in the garage in between races, what it takes to keep the cars going, and also we'll include the new build, bit of testing hopefully, and see how it all goes from there. So we hope to put these films out pretty regularly, and hope everyone enjoys them. We've come to pick up my my block, and here she is after all the disasters I had last year. You can see there's a nice 4-bolt centre main and one trick looking crankshaft, so still running standard on the ends here, but nice 4-bolt MED, new bolts, so let's just hope this is a bit more reliable for me. So a quick 360 then. So we've got stuff going out for dispatch, all their CNC stuff, pillar drills and mills. A nice little engine that's in for a refresh. More machine shops. And then where all the magic happens, all the engines get built in here. Okay folks, so we've got back from Specialist Components. I've got my block here, as you can see. It's all freshly put together. We've got all the crank and the rods are in. It's all been done up in Norfolk, so all the tolerances and everything have been checked, and yeah, it's pretty good. We're ready to go on this. What we're going to be, first thing I want to fit is I want to put on all the timing gear on the on this end of the engine. You've got a new damper, new crank sensor position, and then all the pulleys and everything go on. And what we'll be fitting later will be dog box, nice lightweight flywheel, and obviously the bit that makes all this very special, the BMW 16 valve head. For those of you who don't know the history on this engine, somebody years ago back in the 90s realised that the BMW K engine, which was a 4-cylinder that used to sit flat in the frame on its side, fitted on the A series, and if you look on YouTube and everywhere, you'll see loads and loads of videos about how this engine's developed. And this one was the last of the engines, the K1200 head, so it pretty well goes, it just doesn't take much to fit. You know, even 3 of the head studs line up we tend to run these dry, so you have a water outlet that comes off the end there, and then that links up with the block, and that links up with the block, so the water just flows from the block through the head and then out here and then to the rad and back into the block. So it keeps things really nice and simple. So we'll be fitting that later. I've got to wait for a head gasket for that though, but what we can do is we'll be cracking on with a lot of this. So yeah, it's all to go on this end, and a lot of this, all these pulleys and everything like this, all need lining up. All the tolerances checked, and all the pulleys get to a nice line. So we'll crack on with that and see how we go. Doing the timing end, obviously what we run on this engine is a cam belt, so that's driven off the camshaft there. All this is for now is driving the oil pump, so the cam belt wraps around it. But obviously what we need to do is make sure all the clearances are right. So I'm making sure this lines up nicely with that, and by putting a ruler there we can see that it stays within the bounds of that one. And I've already done the outer part, and what we also want to make sure is that we've got good clearance between the damper there and this this pulley here. So it's all looking really good. So I like to do it at this stage before I get the cover on, and then I can make sure that I've got all the shims fitted properly in here, and it's all fitting nice. So I've got a bit of a dummy build, and then we know when we put it all together it's all going to be correct. So we've now got the cover on, we've got the damper on, and we've got the trigger wheel with the mounting. Now I had a few issues over the years, and effectively my damper was out and wobbling, so I've gone for this MED S-type crank damper, and so I've had to make a new mount for it. So made it out of alley, and make some nice spaces up, and effectively what we're trying to do is get a nice gap and get it all lined up here. It's got to come off again to get the belt on, but for the moment I'm just checking I've got everything right, just checking my tolerances, checking that the center of the sensor is picking up on the teeth. I've yet to take the tooth off, so once the engine's all built up and it's on the gearbox and all the right way up and the head's on, then I can get all this set up properly. So we're getting there. So not a bad start for the day. Just a few hours and we're getting some progress. So it's all coming along quite well. Taking off the pulley now because it's really going to be in the way fitting the gearbox, and getting the timing belt on, so at least the pulley's on, it all lines up. The pulley for the driving the oil pump, because you can see here what we do is that you effectively grind off and then turn down with the lathe a camshaft, so you actually take all the lobes off. So all that's doing now is driving an oil pump. That's all it does. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Next thing will be is I'd like to drop the gearbox on as it is now and put the primary gear on here, and I just want to see if maybe we can run without a gasket. They do have a habit of walking sometimes when they're all tightened up. Can cause a lot of problems with race cars. There is a solution to run a copper gasket, but if you've got the clearance between the primary gear that sits on here and the idler gear that sits about here on the gearbox, then you can tend to run without and just put a silicone bead. So we'll try it, we'll drop it on, see what it looks like, but I've got a feeling that the gearing I'm running it won't work, and that I'm going to have to run with a paper gasket. Really tightened up well because we beefed these bolts up on this one. So today, hopefully we're going to get the bottom end of the engine all wrapped up, get the gearbox on, hopefully get all the transmission cases and the flywheel done, and then we're pretty well ready to, we'll get to that point and then we can get the head on later on. So today I did a few checks yesterday on the primary gear, and I'm going to have to run normal mini gasket. Obviously we must forget the O-ring and new half seal, that all goes in here. Got all my nuts and bolts all ready. Yeah, I tend to run the bigger bolts on the bottom end. You don't have to, but this block was modified years ago, so we've got everything ready to go. But the first thing I'm going to need to do, I want to modify this gasket a little bit, just open up some of these holes around here. I don't want them pulling up and stopping the block from clamping properly onto the gearbox. So we'll do a bit of work around these holes, just open them up a little bit, and then a very, very fine bead of silicone on both faces. Just let it tack off a bit, and that should help with the sealing. Don't want it too wet, so we'll see how we get on. Time to drop the gearbox on. I haven't got a engine stand and stuff like that, so I just find it easier. Gearbox is lighter than the block, so tend to drop the gearbox on. Done all my gaskets, studs in here, studs in the front to just help locate it, stop the gasket from moving. Got a new oil seal fitted in here, so new seal on the end. I'll just put a little bit of, not too much, just a little bit of sealant on here. I lift it up, drop it on. Make sure I don't stick my hands in the silicone. Okay, here goes. That's it, we're down. Brilliant. Yeah, that seal's got in nicely. That's the one everyone tends to have leaks with, but we're looking good there. Great stuff. Let's get it bolted up. Jumped a bit ahead, we got the gearbox on, that went on a treat. Flipped the engine up the other way, still at a decent working height, and we've now got the transmission case and the flywheel all in position. Excuse the light from the door messing things up a bit. So got nice super light flywheel and back plate, paddle clutch because I managed to fry a good rally fibre one a few seasons ago. It just gave up the ghost, just couldn't cope. So that's all on. We've torqued up the flywheel. Kind of a process of tap and torque until it doesn't move anymore. And a little bit of thread lock on there. No lock tabs, not on a race engine, because you tend to find they're a softer material, and they just, with the load that's on there, they tend to just spread a bit, and then you can lose a little bit of the clamping. So we haven't gone for that. So it's starting to come together. I need to get hold of a head gasket in the next couple of days, so we're not going to be doing any more on in respect to the head. But what I will now do is, I've got a new belt to go on. I tend to stick a new one on every year, so I'll now look at finding the top dead center and starting to check my marks, check my pulley marks, and actually make some permanent marks for making sure I can get back to TDC nice and simply. TDC being top dead center. So we'll get the engine mounts on maybe this afternoon and get the pulleys all tightened up now the flywheel's on. It's starting to come together. So I think this will be my last bit of filming today. I've done as much as I can. Being New Year, I need a few bits now to finish off, but you can see it's coming together quite nicely. We've got all that, pulleys all sorted, belts are all looped on, so they're all in the right position. The trigger wheel works nicely, and I've done the cutout for the sensor, timed the engine up, put it on TDC, and got the trigger wheel 90 degrees away from the cutout, so it's all looking good on timing. The software, you can trim a few degrees left and right to get it spot on. Most of the ancillaries are all on now. All the flywheel's all done, all torqued up. So let's hope I have a bit more success with that, but I got myself a nice new big wrench, so that made life a lot easier. Followed all the best procedures for doing that. And then around the back we just got all the pickups. So this is the special pickups that you need for the 16 valve. So you've got the oil drain for the head, there's 2 drains there that come off pockets, and then the main one with the blank in there is the main drive drain off the cylinder head. Water pumps all on. I found I was always having a few issues when I was running electric pump with an outlet straight out. It was just getting a bit too close to the belt, especially with a hose on there. It made it a bit too thick. So myself and Jim Lyons of Gymnet, Sheep Speed, whatever you want to call him, we came up with this plate here with an angle pipe, and that makes a big difference to the way the belts run on it. And finally we've got all the engine mounts on. So really pleased, looking good. Bit of a tidy up now, and we're done so far.